Hi, my name is Dr. Marie Leigh Eloy, and I'm a school psychologist with the San Mateo Foster City School District, and I work at San Mateo Park School. Today, I'll be answering a question that we got from a parent of an 8th grade student who says that the student is exhibiting zero motivation, has been absent from their Google classes, and is on social media until really late at night. The parents have tried to restrict access to Wi-Fi in order to promote work completion, and even that still isn't working. So the question is about how to promote meaningful engagement and connection and motivation, what schools can do about that and what families can do about that at home as well. So thank you very much for this question. I know you're definitely not alone, and a lot of our middle schoolers are struggling with adjusting to remote learning. Some ideas to address the disengagement and the motivation. I see that you have been setting limits and consequences, and that is an excellent first step. There is some psychology research that has looked specifically at middle schoolers and found that they tend to turn more towards peers for advice and less towards their families if they don't feel as involved in family decisions or feel encouraged to express their ideas. So this is some research done by Jacqueline Eccles, and I think that it's kind of a handy research finding to use in this particular case, because what it teaches us perhaps is to give kids a voice in some decisions and planning, maybe about their schedules and their routines. So one idea could be to ask your student what consequence they think is appropriate if they miss class once or twice a week. Another idea might be to ask them how much non-screen time per day do they think is appropriate. Now, I know it might be scary to not know what they might say, but you also might be surprised that they come up with a reasonable and acceptable consequence for themselves, or ideas for themselves. So that's one way to get, and I think just in general, getting buy-in from your adolescent student would be helpful and might inspire them to get more of their work done, since they were a part of that decision-making process. Formalizing this in some kind of written agreement might also help, so that there isn't any future back and forth between the parent and the child. And then rewards could also be something to consider, and it might be something simple like buying them their favorite snack at the end of the week if they finish the teacher's assignment for their history class. Or maybe they get to choose what the dinner is on a Friday. So that's one idea. Another idea to consider might be looking into executive functioning skills and any struggles that a student might have in that area. Executive functioning skills are those planning, prioritizing, organizing skills that help students become a self-regulated learner, and they become really important in the middle school, high school, college years. I think students who already struggled with their executive functioning skills before the pandemic aren't faring very well right now. I think the pandemic has just exacerbated these areas that they might have already had difficulty with. So I will post along with this video some resources for you to look into. There are a lot of executive functioning resources and recommendations out there, very practical strategies for time management. And then just looking at the sub skills and identifying where your student might be lagging, and just really honing in on those areas and building them up. This will be beneficial to your child going for the rest of their lives, really. Sometimes low motivation, like this is a third recommendation I have, sometimes low motivation has to do with not having enough confidence. And again, this remote learning has made us all feel not very confident or efficacious about ourselves. And it could be that those kinds of negative type feelings are also impacting your child's level of motivation. If you don't feel like you can do something, if you don't feel like you can succeed in it, then you're less likely to persevere and try it. So in schools, we often use this 5-to-1 rule, where for every one negative comment we make, or like more critical feedback, we say 5 positive things to the student. And this just kind of helps to maintain positivity and praise and help the student have good feelings so that they'll continue to try, and then they'll also swallow our critical feedback more readily. And my last recommendation has to do with reaching out to the school. So sometimes it is helpful if your student is showing very low motivation and low engagement to involve a third party, like a teacher or a counselor at a school. And sometimes we do play the heavy, and kids might just respond to an outside party more openly than they would to their parents. So know when to reach out to your school to get that support if you need it. And then you could also reach out to the teachers to get the weekly schedules, and let your kid know that you're doing this too, so that he knows that you know exactly what the teacher's assignments are, and then all 3 of you will be on the same page. And we're going to be talking with Mrs. Shoshona Frisch, who is the resource specialist at Burrell Middle School. She is a very seasoned teacher and has been with the district for 30 years. So Mrs. Frisch, I wanted to ask you, how can parents get support from schools if they are concerned about their child's disengagement from distance learning?
Okay, that is an excellent question. First of all, let me start by saying that I think it's important to keep in mind that we are all inexperienced in navigating this pandemic reality. And most of our daily life and routines and interactions have come to a halt. Shelter in place has isolated us in ways we never experienced before. And because it's new to us, we're learning as we go. We have no map, we have no guide, we have no example or curriculum. And we've had very little time to process where we are, what we're experiencing right now, and to process how this is going to affect us in the future, economically, politically, and of course, how is this going to affect education? So back to the question. Right now, teachers at Burrell, we're not just concerned about your child's academic pursuit and goals, but we also worry about their social emotional well-being. So teachers are reaching out to students and asking them, are you safe? Are you well? We are meeting with our homerooms every Wednesday. We're showing slideshows that just talk about how we're doing and how to be positive and how to move forward and how to think about what's going on and make it a positive interaction in our life and a time in our life. Our school district changed the way that we grade during shelter in place. I think this takes a lot of pressure off of everyone. We will not be giving grades. I don't know if you know this yet, Dr. Lay, but instead of grades, we will be giving either a pass or an insufficient evidence. And for insufficient evidence, it really means that there was very little attempt to even log on to the Google Classroom. It's true that there are students who have a thirst for knowledge and structure. Most students come to school, though, because that's where they see their friends. The students are missing each other. They miss their teachers, they miss their classrooms filled with their peers. They're missing the social interactions they experienced before this pandemic. Contacting students, reaching out, connecting with them, allowing them to connect with each other on a Google Meet platform, having meets with groups, with one-on-one, trying, being together. That makes us feel more connected to each other. And that is the feeling of community that we've always fostered at Burrell. It's that human connection, and we all need that.
So our other question is, just generally speaking, because you have had so much experience working with middle school students, and it's a very unique age group, can you tell us how do you help middle schoolers become more motivated about schoolwork?
You know, when they're at school, we have our Burrell Covenant, and we have rules and consequences and restorative justice. But as a parent at home, that's kind of another situation altogether, especially during this pandemic when everybody's at home and everybody's trying to make their new normal, trying to make their needs met. Sometimes for some of our family, their basic needs. So how do you motivate a middle school? You know, when you think about what motivates us for adults, it's really kind of easy, right? Money, power, love, fame, possessions. But for middle schoolers, what is their motivation? What inspires middle schoolers? Okay, this is not a new topic. I have asked the same question, Dr. Lay, to many unmotivated middle schoolers in my career. And I honestly, they weren't mature enough to articulate what is motivating them in their life. They're 12 years old. They don't know yet. They're just getting out of their me box to see that other people might have a different perspective. It's a very interesting transition to watch, because this process of self-awareness is the reflection that how we see ourselves, right? The way people reflect ourselves back to us. There's probably some great psychological way to say this, I'm sure, but without us bumping into each other socially, we don't know who we are. We don't develop as humans in our society singular and isolated. And you know, how do you motivate a student whose most motivation comes from peer interactions when they can't have peer interactions? And so I don't know. There's been great videos about how to set structure and limits. I'm not going to go there. We don't know what the future brings. They say that there will be jobs in the future for our children that haven't even been invented yet. We couldn't have foreseen this pandemic coming. Every grade level is impacted, and we're all trying to figure it out. I'm sure Dr. Lay would agree with me that by putting more negative stress into your child's academic progress isn't going to help the situation. It's not going to build your relationship. It's not going to let your child feel joy and acceptance, okay? Negative stress on situations that are new, that are isolating and frustrating, it's not going to help. It won't make anything better or more satisfying. I suggest that we try to connect deeper with the family that we're isolated with, that we practice kindness, that we play games together and have some fun. If we as educators, and I'm including parents on this, if we can find out what our kids are interested in and somehow participate in that interest with them, all kinds of teaching and learning will happen. I can guarantee it. So, I may not answer the questions with direct strategies. Do this, do that, make structures, routine. There's already videos on that. If there's any message that I want to be heard, it is that we don't really know what we're doing. So we're in this together, trying to figure it out. But I do know that staying in touch, communicating with my students and my colleagues, that's what keeps me feeling connected to something more outside my life. Okay, it may be that distance learning is here for a while. Tell your child to give it a go. Try it. Try something. Get some bravery. Stop resisting. Try to be more involved. And if we're lucky, just when we've completely surrendered to this whole pandemic way of life, it's going to change again. It's going to shift, and it's going to become something new.